inner autonomy that expresses itself. And that happens in group dynamics as we experience presence together. And I think that we get to a point on our journey where we want to have communal experience. We want to walk each other home, as Ram Dass said, right? Like we need spaces to do that are non-dogmatic, that are non-manipulative,
Mm-hmm.
that aid towards people's individual and collective growth as we walk into, I believe, what is this new age that is at hand. This is the kingdom of heaven being realized through us.
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio-video podcast that features spiritually awakening souls that help inspire you to awaken on your own soul journey. On this show, my guest is Luke Bricker. Luke grew up as a pastor's kid in the Vineyard Church movement and naturally followed his DNA into vocational ministry in 2011 at the age of 20. In 2015-16, he entered into a time of intense deconstruction in the midst of what would become a false start church plant. During this dark night of the soul, he surrendered, pressed into reevaluating everything he thought he knew about God. It was at this time that meditation entered his life and became a key spiritual anchor during this dark season. In 2019, after grueling years of disorientation, failure, and frustration, he found himself beautifully invited by the Spirit back into a form of ministry service work, but with a much different message than before: the realization and embodiment of wholeness. His lived experience has led him to the beautiful revelation that the purpose of our life is found in deconditioning from the narratives of our fragmentation, ego, flesh, and consciously orient our life every day toward manifesting the presence of the God within us. Non-dual union with God invites us, he says, to see beyond the foggy illusion of separation, called original sin in Christianity, and enables us to live out our true identity or divine image that empowers unique contribution to the ongoing healing of the world through our individual expressions of hope and wholeness. Luke, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks for having me.
All the pleasure's all ours. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I really enjoy your YouTube channel, and I want to dive a little deep, first of all, into a little more about your spiritual background, if you wanted to start there.
Yeah, spiritual background as Christian. I'm a pastor's kid, as you said. I was born in Miami, Florida, into the Vineyard Church movement. And yeah, pretty much my dad was much more like a Billy Graham style of person. Very John 3:16, just believe. And a lot of his messages were about, just how to be a good, godly husband and things like that, and stuff that's really good. And for a lot of people, they really need help with that. But I've always been interested in the deeper things, always been more esoteric in my approach, more curious, and always felt like there's something deeper, there's something more happening, and never was satisfied with a lot of the teachings that I grew up with, or the understandings. And so, I just began to follow my curiosity and follow that road, and went extremely conservative in a lot of my beliefs and views, because the church environment that I grew up in didn't really have a lot of that. It was just very much more charismatic, not as much, thought and theory. And I craved that. Went very very conservative. Then I knee-jerked way back over to the progressive liberal side of things. Got very much involved with a lot of liberation theology and stuff, which has some goodness to it. And whenever you come to some of the awareness we're at today, there's goodness in everything. And there's
Absolutely.
also deep, dark crap in places too. It's all happening simultaneously.
Yes.
So that's kind of where I began to see is like there isn't really a theological doctrinal way of understanding that's going to bring hope to me. It's transcending that and understanding the way of being, the inner wholeness, the yearning and grasping for concepts and ideas to bring some level of fulfillment, realizing that there is nothing outside of me that's ever going to make me whole. I have to come to that realization within. And it's through people like Ram Dass, Alan Watts, that really helped me come to that. And venturing into and exploring a lot of other traditions outside of Christianity has really helped me understand the world in a big way through Zen Buddhism or Taoism, Vedanta, different things of that nature. And now Full Circle has helped me really to help people who have this uh, really just being in the West, this awareness of the figure of Jesus, this Christ figure, helping people see the more mystic nature of the teachings that we've all been so familiar with. And now seeing all along there was something deeper. There was something beneath the surface. And so now I'm, really orienting my life towards helping people see the non dual reality of the Christ tradition.
Beautiful, beautiful. So a lot of our viewers and listeners, because it's audio and video, are probably the ones that have never been raised as a Christian, probably are wondering what this word that I used when I introduced you, deconstruction. Can you give the definition for deconstruction and explain how that went for you?
Yeah, I'd love to. So deconstruction is actually an American Christian phenomenon that's happening right now.
Yes.
And it's been going on for quite a long time, but it's more popular now than ever. And basically, just if you think about that word deconstruction, you've constructed something in your life. You've constructed ideas, you've constructed an identity, you've constructed a religious uh, worldview that maybe you've participated in or are the product of. A lot of times it's a mix between the two. It's part of your nature by being, I don't know, wherever somebody lives, or it's been nurtured by someone giving this to you. So deconstruction is the process of looking, taking apart the things that have been either handed to you or that you have built within yourself conceptually, through your ideology, and taking that apart to look again deeper beneath the surface. I akin it to someone who, you know, they decide that when their car isn't running very well, they decide for themselves to open up the hood and take a peek around and get
Mm,
familiar with what's going on. And so that's what I decided to do. My religion of origin was not getting me to the places that the destinations I wanted to go. So I decided to peek under the hood for myself and do some upgrades.
beautiful.
And that's deconstruction in a nutshell, I think.
And do you
Which
find, oh, sorry.
I just would say, which is the fastest growing quote denomination in American Christianity next to Pentecostalism right
Oh, is
now.
it?
So
Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So, would there's this gentleman named Rob Bell,
yes,
and he wrote a book, I think it's called Love Wins or Love Always Wins, or something like that. Was that
yes.
part of the beginning of your journey, I might guess?
So when Rob Bell came out with Love Wins, my wife and I were at an organization called Youth with a Mission, and it's a very Pentecostal charismatic thing that helps you kind of become a missionary, if you will. We thought we were
Mm-hmm.
going to do that. We dropped
Mm-hmm.
out of that, but
Okay.
his book came out at that time. I was going very conservative at that time. And because the voices in my circle said Rob Bell's a heretic, I regurgitated Rob Bell's a heretic.
Yeah, of course.
Funny enough, 2.5 years later, whenever I saw through that illusion, who's the first person that I went to? Rob Bell. So,
Yeah.
yes, Rob Bell's book, Love Wins, which today is I feel like is very PG or G compared to where I've been at. But
I know.
yes,
Yeah.
that's a great gateway drug for people who are finding themselves out of fundamentalism.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So that's more of a what you call progressive Christianity, I guess. Some people call it that.
Um, it could be lead towards that direction. Rob's book in specific, I think, just helps people expand their awareness of what's real about the human experience.
Oh, okay.
Um, but it's a gateway to, I think, more progressive ideals. But for me, it was a gateway to Ram Dass, you
Oh, there you
know.
go.
So that was
I
my story with
I
Ram.
love me some Ram Dass. That's
Yeah,
good stuff. Yeah, yeah.
which today's really popular, but back in 2016, 17, it was not as popular to enjoy Ram Dass, you know.
Have you seen the Netflix documentary where he
Yes.
has a stroke? And I guess he lived like another 20 years with that stroke, because I think he got the stroke back in something like, don't quote me for sure, but I think it's something like 1997.
Yep.
And he only
Around
passed
that.
away recently, right? With 20, I don't know what it was, 2017 or something. I'm not sure.
2020. Yeah.
Oh,
It was,
2020 he passed.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
he missed
I think
all the
right before
craziness.
COVID, right?
Yeah,
Or it might have been 20, it was right after Christmas or something like that. 2019,
uh,
2020. Yeah.
okay, so he missed all the madness. Okay, well there you go. He knew when to exit. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Lucky
good.
him.
He's a happy camper. Okay. So, no, but what a beautiful soul. And I just, that documentary made me cry because I just saw how he was able to remain in presence throughout the stroke. And
Yes.
he saw it as a gift
Yeah.
instead of fighting it and pushing against it. Because I think most humans, when they get a health challenge, the tendency is to get very depressed or to
Yeah.
push against it or run away or end their life or whatever. No, he said, "Oh, it's all one. It's just what's happened. Okay, gonna
Yep.
embrace this." Just a
Yep.
beautiful example of a
Yeah.
beingness. I will say. Okay, so thank you for giving us the idea that what deconstruction means, just for those that are probably have never heard that term. But I know Christians or former Christians definitely know what
Yeah.
deconstruction means. So basically, deconstructing the identity and finding the wholeness within the true identity, which is within. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this: when you were now, you're also the son of, yeah, you said that you're the son of a pastor's. You're the son of a pastor, right?
Hmm.
Is he still a pastor now?
Yeah. Yep.
And has this put any kind of a strain on your relationship with family members?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think that's natural, you know,
Oh yeah.
even Yeshua talks about that, you know, there's going to be a sword between family members, you know, father against son, son against mother. And there's going to be people in your life that don't understand. Well, also too, a prophet's not welcome in his hometown, you know. So I live
Mm-hmm.
in San Diego, California now, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was in Indianapolis, Indiana, where my dad still is. And I just got back, yes, last night actually from visiting.
Oh, okay.
And it's very unique to go back and have the dynamics of some of those relationships, and you begin to really learn what matters and what doesn't matter in a relationship. And
Mm.
so with my dad, learning to, because I was his successor, he still wants me to be a successor. I
Oh,
mean,
okay.
I don't know as much anymore because, you know,
He's
if I
started to give up.
I think he's given up by now. Actually, not. I mean, he still has some hope. He's extremely optimistic, which has been a great trait that he's passed on to me, but almost
Yep.
sometimes naively optimistic. So he, you know, he hasn't understood this journey. But again, I think because he's very much like just the simple nuts and bolts, like,
Mhm.
you know, just believe Jesus died in your place for your sin and how the Spirit can fill you to, like, you know, build a great business or whatever. Again, there's place for all of it.
Mhm.
If it in existence, everything is in existence for growth, development, awareness, all of these things, right? So people out there really need it, and they still need his message. For me, it's created a strain. And the first time that it happened, I was going through this deconstruction, and I will say deconstruction in its proper terminology does have a lot to do with deconstructing concepts and ideas about God and how you exist with the spirit, with
Mhm.
the religion, with these things. It's very conceptual because Christianity, by virtue in the West, is very conceptual. It's, do you believe these things, these tenets? If you say you believe them, then you are a Christian. You are this, you are accepted. And if you don't, you're not. American Christianity doesn't look as much about the character of a person. They don't really look at the fruit of the tree. They just want to look at what the label says by it. So deconstruction has a lot to do with concepts, ideas. And I remember one time talking with my dad about penal substitutionary atonement theory. And in layman's terms, that just means when you hear people say the blood of Christ that covers your sin, that's the technical wording for that, penal substitutionary atonement. Jesus died in your place for your sins, essentially. And I qualified that as a theory. He got really, really defensive about that.
Mm.
It's not a theory.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean theory? This is the truth, you know? And ever since that moment, back in 2017, I think that was, I just realized I can't have theological conversations with my dad. It's not beneficial for the father-son relationship.
Exactly.
So I just I learned to dance,
Yeah.
honestly, with those things. And it's taken me a long time to not, in the same way that I was telling him, don't take this personally. I'm talking about this theological point. I'm not talking about you. I actually took that very personally, and I've had to learn that art of surrender of this isn't personal. If you look at my channel, a lot of it's about that. Like, people are just reacting to their own brokenness all the time.
Yep.
And we're projecting ourselves onto others, and others are projecting themselves onto us. And I love, Ram Dass seems to be brought up a lot now, but we're all walking each other home. And can we have grace and compassion for ourselves and for those around us? And it's been an art of learning that it's not that my dad doesn't care, doesn't want to, or I don't. It's learning to not take things personal and learning how to love in the midst of differences. Because that's the whole concept of non-duality, is that it's, even if it's fundamentally conceptually different, it all has its place and role for awakening.
Yep. Yeah. As Tony Parsons would say, nothing is becoming everything. It's
Yep.
all, God is in everything. God
Yes.
is in the darkness and the light.
That's
and
it.
and you're right. There is a place for what your dad does, because that speaks to a certain segment that I read Dr. David Hawkins, and he says that people can only behave according to the current level of consciousness that they're currently at. It's very hard to go out, break out of that paradigm. So your dad's perception of the reality of the world, he can't see outside those parameters, and that's okay, because that's where he's
Yes.
at. Nothing wrong with that, and he speaks to people that are there.
Yep.
That's great, because they're all going home, whether they like it or not. Everyone's going back.
It all
Back.
is. And
That's the
it's
beauty.
serving people on their trajectory. Everybody's on a trajectory.
Yes.
And if he's a stepping stone for someone on a certain level, and
Yes.
I
Yes.
just had to come to the conclusion my role is different than that.
It
And so
is.
we don't have to square everything up all the time. I love Alan Watts. He talks about everybody's trying to straighten out a wiggly world. And it's like, it's so true. It's like, we don't have to get on the same page or square. Let it be wiggly. I have a
Yeah.
different role. So does he. He serves a different demographic than me. And it all belongs.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah. Yeah.
belongs. As Richard Rohr would say, a little plug for that. He's a
Oh, yeah.
great one too. So,
I tried to get Richard on the show, but he said that he's gone into isolation. So
oh man,
yeah, he's like, he's done for a while. He's just gonna, I don't know, go somewhere and just stays in silence for months and months, I guess, which is
he's
interesting.
brilliant.
He's wonderful. I love him. Yeah, he's great. But yeah, okay, great. Well, this is I love this conversation we're having, and I think it speaks to the depths of where we're headed next in this conversation. So we covered the fact that you went through the deconstruction, and then you had the dark night of the soul, and that's a term that's used a lot by people on the spiritual path, because it's almost like a form of resistance of what is in that moment, what's happening, and it's basically your world is being ripped apart. But that's the phenomenal. That's not the, like, there is part of you, of course, that's always peace, always stable, always good, the real you, I like to call it. Tell me a little bit about that. How did you get through your dark night of the soul? How did you stop resisting what was happening? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yeah, with that too. And a lot, like you said, a lot of people are familiar with that term, the dark night of the soul.
Mhm.
That's a pretty standardized common term. And I think what's interesting in relationship to, Christianity and the phenomenon that's happening with this massive kick against this, religious stuff that's going on is that, St. John of the Cross wrote the book, The Dark Night of the Soul. I
Okay.
mean, so that's if you really want to be honest about the Christ tradition, it has that as a part of it. We try to avoid that in modern circles as being, you just don't have enough faith or you don't have whatever. And it's like, no, like going through complete identity loss is a part of the journey, the
Sure.
soul awakening. And for me, it was just loss of identity, loss of purpose and meaning. Again, I've learned now that there is no purpose or meaning.
That's
There
right.
is no identity at all.
Except
But
that our mind gives it, right? Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to is meaning is what you make it.
Mm.
Identity is what you perceive it to be and choose to embody.
Mhm. Mm.
And we are here incarnated for there in some cosmic scale. We're learning something here in some way. We wouldn't have consciousness if it wasn't for some, and maybe it is purposeless, but to have the ability to choose purpose, I think, is the purpose. And
Okay.
so for me, the dark night of the soul, it was the loss of everything. It was, loss of trajectory, loss of career. I didn't go to school. I wasn't trained for anything else. I was a pastor's kid who went to
Mm.
school to be in ministry. I mean, I worked other jobs and then, early 20s really went in full time ministry. And I was 26 whenever all this was taking place, 26, 27, 33 now. Um, so I like to say that I had my crucifixion and think I'm in my resurrection and I'm looking for ascension. So, you know,
There you go.
all happens at 33 in my tradition. But
Oh yeah, Jesus, 33 years. There you
yeah.
go.
So
Interesting.
you know, for me, navigating the dark night of the soul, that's where meditation began to come into play. And I remember I got a book, Richard Rohr book, The Naked Now. And The Naked Now began to give me some framework for kind of what Zen would teach you as well, is that he would use Christian language, like the Holy Spirit's already within everyone. And what we're doing is essentially digging down into the truth that's already there, and in Zen you'd say that enlightenment is the natural mind. You're just moving away all of the clouds, from the sun that's always shining.
Yes.
um and so that really began to help me learn that all of this that's happening isn't really happening, quote, to me. It's
Mm.
all a part of what it means to be alive, what it means to be human. And it's holding down to the anchor. And it's funny, again, I look back at so much of the Christian ideas and things, and it's like we're just so familiar with the language, but it's then the whole time. It's that quote anchor of faith. But faith is believing in something that is not seen on the physical realm of reality. It's choosing to have a metaphysical perspective to everything that's happening in your right now existence and seeing it all and trusting it all to come into alignment and into its perfect order. And so surrendering to say that everything that's happening now I have faith to, I have trust to believe that it's happening in perfect order. I have a wife and I have two kids, and we moved across the country. And, the thing that I came here to do didn't work out, and all of that. It was meditation was a moment where I could release my grip from trying to control everything and accept everything as the 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 modes in which I'm being purified, the modes in which I'm coming into the fullness of myself, and that none of you don't get shaped without friction. you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yeah,
and so learning that my dark night of the soul, I began to, I guess I could say now in retrospect, I began to assign purpose to it by transcending it, and that's what helped me continue on the path.
that's beautiful. Yep, that's fantastic. Now let's move on to what you're doing now. So this meditation. So what exactly do you do? You have a beautiful YouTube channel, but I assume that you, or I've heard you say that you also welcome people contacting you and you help, you guide. You're like a spiritual guide or counselor. Tell me a little bit about that. Am I getting it right?
Yeah. So I moved out here to San Diego in 2016 to start or plant a church in my tradition's language. That didn't come to fruition. Ended up working a few other places, and in 2020 we started meeting on the beach. After a year, we needed to reevaluate some things. So we are a church, by all intents and purposes, according to the IRS. We're a
Oh,
church,
okay.
and but my role and function in that isn't necessarily as much leading a Sunday morning gathering right now in the traditional understanding of a church. Again, in the Christian tradition, we have the role of a spiritual director. Um, and what a spiritual director does, there's been a shift more towards language of a companion than a director, because director feels kind of hierarchical. But
Yeah.
there are things that you pick up along the way, and when you go into a town that you're unfamiliar with, you do ask for directions from a local, and you become a local in some of these things by virtue of experience. And so I help direct people through really this deconditioning process of
Mhm.
sifting through concepts, ideas about who we think we should be, who we think we are, and stepping into and awakening the fullness of the divinity that's within each and every one of us, that's dormant, that's just simply needing cultivated like a garden. And so I help people get started on that, for analogy purpose, gardening process. And instead of trying to hoard people or hold on to people, the best doctors, the ones that help people get well and teach them how to keep themselves well, and
Mhm.
so they can go help others teach how to be well. And I've been through a 7-year process of getting well and becoming more in tune with my wholeness. And so I just help people get started with that and give them tools. In my opinion, it's through meditation, through acceptance, through surrender, these tools, and help cultivate them in their life so that they can become more in tune with the infinite, more aligned to who God is expressing to be through them and as them in the world. And so I function in that role of a spiritual director. And then we also, we lead different groups and things. We're involved with other, I believe in just humanitarian outreach too. So we do a lot of stuff with the homeless.
Mhm.
I go to Tijuana every week. Um, just very much about some of that. And we are going to be getting more of a traditional sense of a church uh, back up again, because I think there needs to be an alternative for people who are leaving communities
Mhm.
and they go into, my channel used to be called the spiritual nomad, because that's where I was at. I was just
Mhm.
walking, trying to figure things out. But there comes a time where you must, I believe you must, and that's a big, you know, big controversial thing to tell somebody
Oh yeah,
somebody
yeah,
must,
must be right.
but you must eventually interface with others as well, because it's through that that we grow. And this is, I think before we record, I was telling you I've been, reading a lot about G. Edgar Jeff and a lot of these understandings of holding presence and power, and how, and I don't mean power in the political sense of whatever, I mean authority, inner autonomy that expresses itself, and that happens in group dynamics as we experience presence together. And I think that we get to a point on our journey where we want to have communal experience. We want to walk each other home, as Ram Dass said, right? Like we need spaces to do that, that are non-dogmatic,
Mm.
that are non-manipulative,
Mhm.
that aid towards people's individual and collective growth as we walk into, I believe, what is this new age that is at hand. This is the kingdom of heaven being realized through us. And so we need time alone in isolation, but we also need to then aid each other, be with
Mm-hmm.
each other, mirror each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we're going to be facilitating more and more of. We've been doing it in small groups, but it needs to be available for more people.
Nice. So if people want to join that, how do they find out about that?
So it's called Current. So it's here in San Diego. So if anybody is in San Diego, or we're in North San Diego, so San Diego, Orange County, they can hit me up. I have my website, lukebricker.com, on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram too. The church is Current Collective Church. And yeah, we're really just trying to embody the mystic teachings of Christ in a non-dogmatic way and help people realize wholeness. So online, just search for it. And if you find me, you'll find that. So
Exactly. So this is like a nonprofit church. This is a nonprofit church. This is a like a non-dual church, kind of.
yes, essentially, yeah. And
That's
so it
interesting.
on the back end, that's what I put into the website stuff so people can
Okay.
find that. You know, people need a place where the mystics, contemplatives, non-dual people who resonate with the tradition of Christ, where do they find like-hearted community? And so we want
Okay.
to facilitate that.
Okay. Well, I'll have to come check that out when I come down to San Diego sometime.
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be cool to meet you in person. And yeah, I feel a good vibe with you, good energy, and I appreciate you sharing your journey with our
Yeah,
audience. I think this is really, really lovely. Thank you so much, Luke.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And if you're open to it, you're always welcome to come back for part two sometime.
Yeah,
And
I'd be down
yeah,
for
so
sure.
all right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for watching. This has been another edition of Soul Inspire. The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at DaleCross.net and live your greatness.